We posted 2,525 YouTube videos last year that helped generate over 11 million in income for agents. And there's one system behind all of it, stolen from the biggest YouTubers like MrBeast and Red Bull, that can help you make content better than 99% of people in real estate who aren't getting leads. I'm going to show you the 5 systems behind all of it, and you can do it all for $0. So by the end, you'll know exactly how to come up with proven ideas before you ever hit record. Before we get into the full system, let me save you 7 years that I've spent learning how YouTube actually work. The idea sets the ceiling of performance for your videos. The execution only determines how close you get to that ceiling from the idea. See, 95% of agents spend most of their time on execution, which is filming, editing, posting, and only 5% of their time on the idea. So when you flip that ratio, the content actually starts working. A bad idea with great execution will always lose to a great idea with average execution, always. And the idea is the ceiling. So your edit, your lighting, your camera equipment, your posting schedule, all of that is just execution. And execution determines how close you get to the ceiling. But if the ceiling is low, none of that is going to save you. I had to learn this the hard way. 7 years ago, I spent 0 time on ideation, strategy. All I cared about was making videos, getting them edited and posted, and I obsess over production, the quality, better cameras, tighter edits, nicer graphics, and all of that while the videos still flatlined. I look at the videos and go, that looks great. Why didn't it work? Because looking great doesn't matter when the idea is just good enough. I see hundreds of agents making the same exact mistakes, the same pattern, great production, average ideas, flat or no results. And then we started watching what actually performed across 155 channels within the industry and way more outside. And what surprised me was some of those videos that broke out and went viral rarely had the best production. They actually had the best idea, the best packaging, a great hook, the sharpest angle on a topic that people actually already cared about. And that's when we stopped asking, how do we make this look better? And we started asking, is the idea worth making at all? So here's the simplest version. Whether you're already posting or just getting started, what you want to do is you create a private playlist on YouTube. I call mine ideas, and you can download vidIQ. It's a free plugin, or like ViewStats or any other plugin like that. And every Monday and Friday at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, spend 15 minutes just scrolling the YouTube homepage. And every time you see a video that you like, whether it's the topic, the thumbnail, or the title, you save that to your playlist. But the one thing that you want to look for is the vidIQ extension number, and make sure that the outlier score is at least a 3x before you save it to your playlist. And that's it. And that's completely free. It only takes about 30 minutes to an hour every single week, but that is thousands to tens of thousands of dollars in strategy experience. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But if you're already creating content, you can actually pull up your last 10 videos and you can be honest with yourself. How many of those ideas did you come up with the day that you filmed or the night before? Now look at which ones actually performed. It's almost always the one where the idea was strong, not the one that had the nicest edit or the best B-roll. It's actually the best idea. So before you film your next video, write down 10 ideas, not 1, 10, then pick the strongest one. That single change will do more for your next video than getting a new camera upgrade or doing a new editing style or some posting hacks. Most people film the first idea that comes to their mind. The top 1% on YouTube film the best idea out of 10 or 100. And that's the biggest difference. And you have to ask yourself, how many of your last 10 videos were the best idea that you had that week and that month? Or were they just the only idea that you had that week? So the simple system is you write down 10 ideas, pick one, but that's only doing it once, and that makes it more of a trick. Doing it every single week, that makes it a system. And here's how the best content teams in the world actually run that system. If your ideation process and your strategy is someone saying, what should we post this week during a filming session or the day before, that's not ideation, that's actually just scrambling. This is the foundation for everything else that we're going to talk about. Nothing else in the system works if you don't separate ideation from execution. And the one principle for us is that ideation is a phase in the process, not an afterthought. See, the best media teams like Alex Hormozi's, MrBeast, Gary Vee treat it as its own meeting, its own role, and its own dedicated time block. We had an agent who was a great agent. He had a small channel and he was great on camera and he was consistently posting, but every single week the video felt random. One week he would do a market update. Next week was a neighborhood tour. And then he would have some like listicle video and there was no thread connecting any of it. And he maybe had 1 or 2 deals from YouTube in a year and that's it. And we asked him, how did you choose your topic? And his answer was, I just think of something before I film and I see what's working for others and I just copy them. So we changed how he did ideation and now he's closing nearly $1 million in income a year from the content. And that's exactly how the teams behind MrBeast, Red Bull, Alex and Layla Hermosi that spend $50,000 to $100,000 and more a month on content, but the principle is the same whether or not you're spending any money or zero. If you have a dedicated weekly or monthly ideation session, you spend about 30 minutes to an hour max. You come up with 10 to 30 ideas per session and you filter that to the top 1 to 3. And then you pick the best ones that align with your market, your audience, your brand, and the strategy that you want for your channel. See, that dedicated monthly meeting is not just some accident that's bolted on to anything else. The purpose of it is that everyone on your content team brings you ideas, they pitch the ideas, and you pressure test those live. And then you rank the best ones that are actually ready to create a creative brief, a script, go out and film. Before any idea gets greenlit, ask, is this something that the right person in your audience would share with their friend, their spouse, or their team before they ever contact you, me? Because if the idea only works as a view maxer, but wouldn't actually make someone say, you've got to watch this to the people in their life who matter, it's not ready. Because virality and authority are completely different filters and the best ideas pass both. Paddy Galloway, the #1 YouTube strategist behind Red Bull, he's worked with MrBeast, another big brand. He actually brainstorms 100 ideas and he filters those 100 ideas to 10. And then he only picks 1. And MrBeast has a ton of full-time ideation and strategists where their only job is to develop the research, the idea, and make the pitch and come up with the brief. The thing that you want to ask yourself as a creator is, when was the last time your team or you killed an idea because a better one surfaced itself? Not because you ran out of time. If you aren't killing 5 to 10 ideas for every one that you film, you probably aren't coming up with enough. But before we talk about what kind of ideas to actually greenlight and move forward with, you need to know the framework for how to actually allocate your resources every single month. Otherwise, you're just picking your favorites instead of building an actual strategy. So now that you have a dedicated ideation meeting where the system starts, but if every idea that comes out is just a random shot in the dark and it just kind of feels like some organized chaos, you need to actually have some type of content mix ratio. And this is how you decide what to greenlight versus what to get rid of. It's not based off of your gut and your intuition. You want it to be based off of data as well as intentional resource and risk allocation every single month. You're either only making safe content, and that safe content is exactly why channels plateau, or what we see a lot of people do is they're just constantly experimenting on their channel with a bunch of completely random ideas and nothing on the channel actually compounds. And so that is why having a 70-20-10 content mix prevents both of those. And I'll get into it, but we worked with an agent who had a few thousand subscribers on YouTube. He wasn't small, but he wasn't big. He would get a viral video here or there. It was very rare and sparingly, and a lot of his videos was actually low performers. And he really only had one lens of picking ideas, and it was often just copying what worked for other people. But he would spend a lot of time experimenting with random formats, random content buckets, and there was no pattern in everything he was creating. And when he did have one that outperformed, he would abandon the winners next time with something completely random and new. I fell into this trap very early on as well, where I was spending 100% of my time on experimentation and nearly 0% of it on proven, repeated content formats and models. And the channel generally will always flatline or stall in growth there. And when we came into that agent's channel, we were actually able to double it within 6 months and generated more business from YouTube than ever. He scaled from 6 figures in GCI to over $500,000 a year just directly from YouTube. And what we did is we found 3 repeatable content buckets on his channel. One was a growth development video. This is what I kind of call like your coming soon to your city type videos. The second was market videos, market updates. And then the third was some type of neighborhood tour or listicle video. And we literally just ran that play every single month. And the experimentations were here or there, but we at least had 3 buckets that we knew we could pull from every single month. And here's how you can do it too. The 70% in the 70-20-10 content mix is 70% proven. And these are formats that you created back, if you remember, that we talked about earlier, your idea private playlists that are 3x to 100x in outlier data from like vidIQ. And for example, if you're only posting 4 videos a month, which is 1 a week, this means that 2 to 3 of your videos every single month should be proven ideas backed by 3 to 10x outlier data. And then you repeat the formula. So when you find similar videos in the same content bucket, for example, like the coming soon bucket that we talked about, where it talks about most major commercial developments coming to a city. And when we realized that that bucket performed extremely well on the channel, we're like, let's just run that play, run that bucket every single month and come up with a new video just within that bucket for a different area, different topic, etc. And the next 20% are iterations. So this is the same format, but maybe a new angle. Going back to the example of posting 4 videos a month, this means only 1 or 2 of those should be iterations on what's proven. And you might take the format of the packaging, meaning like the thumbnail or the title, but you change the topic for like new construction, 55 plus, or you decide to make it more of an outside tour and you just iterate on something that's already proven. And so that leaves you 10% of your content mix every single month for experiments. And the thing is, if you're new or you're trying to grow, maybe that's actually 0 for the first like 6 to 12 months. And this isn't something that you want to also do that's completely random. You want it to be some trend that you can back from data outside the industry. This might be something that you see that you're like, okay, cool. There's this creator who's doing something in the vlog space, or maybe they're in the business niche, and you bring it into the industry. As an example, over 2 years ago, we saw that the tier list was very popular for travel, credit cards, for business. People were ranking the best travel cards or the best cruise lines in this like tier list that kind of came from gaming. And what we did is we tested it in the industry because we saw no one using it, and we brought it in and it worked. Same thing with like the man on the street interview style. We saw that working. We decided to test that, walking, driving tours. And once it works, now you can make it more of a repeatable format. The key principle to remember is that every idea should connect back to the main goal, whether that is channel growth, maybe it's getting more clients, maybe it's building your brand locally. And you have to ask yourself, does this build trust with new viewers and keep your regular viewers coming back as well? Because if it doesn't answer both, then it might not be worth creating. What we found is if you want a high value audience, like the wealthy or more sophisticated audiences, then that 70% proven bucket isn't just content and topic that gets the most views. Actually, the topic that makes the right person share it to their friend or family in a group chat and say, yo, you need to watch this video. And the bar for proven isn't just performance data. It's whether the content will attract the right person, not just the most people. When most people share your videos with friends, that is the highest form of trust. An example, in a highly competitive luxury market, we had a channel with a few thousand subscribers, and his strategy was one coming soon type development video that talks about the future growth of his city. And then the second was a market update to show his expertise. And then the one video that was usually some type of listicle or tour. And those were about like his 3 or 5 key areas that he actually wanted to do business with. Then the other video was free. And that's where we could test like lifestyle stuff that matched his brand or his audience of like wealthy, affluent buyers and sellers. And that's where we experimented a lot more. And he was also a big content creator, so we experimented a lot in short form there too, before bringing some of the ideas into long form. Flight Story, which is behind the Diary of the CEO, one of the #1 fastest growing podcasts worth hundreds of millions of dollars now, tests experiments on newer shows first in their long form clips channel, in their shorts channel, then rolls into winners that they can use for the Diary of the CEO channel. It's the same principle. You want controlled experimentation without gambling the main channel. And that is why having 70% of your videos be proven is important. If you looked back at your last 10 videos and you asked yourself, what percentage of those were proven repeatable videos? And then what percentage of those, the rest of the videos, were iterations? And then what percentage were true experiments? And if you can't answer that, you probably don't understand your content mix quite yet, and you might be guessing. Now that you understand how to have the ideation meeting, how to have the right ideas and content mix, that can all be worthless if you can't tell the difference between a flop and a proven format. And that's where this next system solves. If you're not tracking what actually works, you're constantly rebuilding from scratch every single week, and it kind of feels like the entrepreneurial or sales roller coaster, rebuilding the channel every single month. And the system that turns random wins into a repeatable format is having an outlier tracking system. And this is the machine underneath everything that makes everything else easier. Because without this system, you can't tell the difference between what is actually proven versus what is just a flop. How you want to think about this is when something has a 3 to 10x score with like vidIQ's outlier system, that is an outlier. And when that happens once, that's an outlier. 2 is a pattern, and then 3 is a trend. So the more you keep track of it, the more you start to understand. And the definition of an outlier is that it performed above the average of the rest of the channel. When I started making videos, we would just make videos that were random. I would have an idea here, or idea there, and it would be like, okay, cool, let's do that. That didn't work when you start to scale it up and you want to actually have performance and you want to actually get results. Every single month, you end up coming with completely different topics and there's no pattern. We never replicated any format or any content buckets or just any videos that end up performing. I rarely studied why something worked. And so when you did have one of those like 10 to 100x outliers, those end up saying as one-offs on the channel because no one tracked it and no one asked what made it different. So the simple way to do this is to compare every video to a 90-day like average or median on a channel, and you can use AI like Claude to do that. Or there's softwares like vidIQ, ViewStats, 1 of 10 that does it all for you. And what you can do is you can pull all of that data, put it into AI, and you can ask it to find the patterns and it will tell you automatically. That's one of the cool things nowadays is it saves you hours of time just trying to understand it, just putting the raw data in and saying, hey, what patterns and trends do you see? Nowadays, the tools aren't exactly what matters. What actually matters is the discipline. And this is what makes the biggest difference. Anything that is 3x or higher is an outlier. What you want to do is you study that and you repeat that formula. And then you log every experiment into like a shared database, like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Notion, and you label it as a success or failure. And then this is where having a private YouTube playlist comes back full circle. Is you can have an idea playlist, packaging playlist for thumbnails, an editing playlist, and you can save anything that catches your eye or anything that's good. And then you can bring those references every single month to an ideation session and say, hey, which one can we actually execute on? And this one system of literally spending 15 minutes to 30 minutes a week, maybe an hour max, spending 1 to 2 days, Monday and Friday, is worth its weight in gold. This plus the ideation meeting is the exact system that Paddy Galloway charges over $25,000 a month and comes up with ideation for some of the biggest brands like Red Bull. Granted, there's a lot of like experience and other things that they do, but this ideation system is something that you can steal from them for nearly $0. And then the flight story idea of having a shared experiment database allows you not to waste time retesting things that you've already learned from. And so when we did the same thing, we had one agent where we tested building a market channel only on, and we found out that it worked so well. He got inbound leads for listings, and we decided to roll that out across way more channels. And we tested just adding one market video a month across multiple agents, multiple different markets, and the same exact result happened. Local homeowners, listing leads, and we were able to find something that was repeatable and proven, especially when we did these videos that we call like honest videos, where they're kind of like a review and we're saying why these homes are not selling in this area, or my honest review of living in this city. And that's how one good test becomes a proven format that you can scale, but it only happens if you track the data. If a thumbnail works for like a market update, then you want to think about, how do I reuse that same thumbnail idea, but maybe we iterate on like the background or the text and we come up with some new idea. but we keep testing it across 3 videos before you call it something that is proven or time tested, because it has to work across 3 to 5 different scenarios to be more of a principle or proven format. You want to ask yourself, what's the best performing video that you or your team has ever made? And how many times have you deliberately replicated that format? So now that you have the system, how to come up with the best ideas for the meeting, how to mix it up within your strategy every month, plus you have the tracking system for all the data, there's a problem that nobody really talks about, and all of this still runs through meetings. And if your meetings are broken, the system is broken. And here's what we learned of how to fix that. I'm just gonna be completely honest that this next system changed how I run all of our meetings in the entire company, not just content meetings. And this was stolen from people like Jeff Bezos and many others. If you're anything like me, you've probably got meetings on your calendar every single week or every single month, but ask yourself, are we spending a lot of time in those meetings just giving updates or like setting up the context? Because that's what happened to us. And we were spend a lot or most of the time just on updates, and we never ended up getting to the actual decisions that needed to be made in the meeting and to move the needle within the business. And so this is how we're able to turn literally a 60-minute meeting into a 15 to 30-minute meeting of pure decision making, and we're actually able to learn and take action from that. So the one thing here, if you are a solo agent or like a 2-person team or there's no one in your content team, this still applies to you, because the principle scales down to 1 sentence. Write down before you talk, even if you're only talking to yourself. Information transfer should nearly always travel async. And that's something that I had to learn, is that meetings are only for decisions and discussion around the decisions. If you're learning and spending time in the meeting, learning new information that could have been updated before, the system's already failing. This is how we fixed it. We reached a point where I was spending about 10 plus hours a week literally on meetings, and it felt like a water cooler chat with no clear direction and there's no clear priorities. It felt like updates every single time, and I was kind of getting sick of meetings because the team would literally just surface the exact same problems that we've already talked about. And I asked myself, how do we fix this? And so I went down a rabbit hole, because a lot of the times the problems were essentially 3 or 5 of the same problems that looked different on the surface, but if you looked at the root of the problem, it was the exact same problem, and it was driving me crazy. By the time we got to what do we do about this, people were literally already checked out of the meeting, and the meeting might have felt productive because it was like full. It actually wasn't. It was just full of just talking. For teams, here's what we changed. You have 3 layers that you work within. Layer 1 is an async Friday or Monday form with all of the information, and the team or you fills it out, and that person submits their numbers, their wins, maybe any misses, any blockers, and they have their own diagnosis of what's working and what's not before the meeting, not during the meeting. And that form every single week helps to populate layer 2. And this is a pre-meeting memo. And ideally, this is done 24 hours in advance before the meeting. But here's the nice thing. When you have all of the forms, whether it's 1, 3, 5, 10, you can put that into Claude and it can create the meeting memo for you. And it helps identify the 1 to 3 highest leverage problems for you. And you want to keep these memos very short, literally 1 to 2 pages. And all it does is frame the decisions that need to be made. And the memo answers, why does this matter? What specifically is the problem? What do I recommend? And then what are the next steps? Then layer 3, the meeting, is decisions only off of the biggest problems within the memo. You spend 0 time on updates, 0 time trying to understand the problem, and 100% of the time debating the solutions and who is going to be the owner of owning that problem. And the agenda is preset before the meeting. And the nice thing is, since we use Notion and AI to automate most of this, the specific tools really don't matter at the end of the day. The discipline behind it actually does. But our new rule is no form, no memo, no meeting. If we don't know the decisions that need to be made in the meeting, then we don't have any meeting. And by the way, kind of like I mentioned, this isn't mine. This is something modeled from Jeff Bezos, and he made Amazon famous for this, where they didn't have PowerPoints. They had written memos, decisions only. And I know like Layla Hermosi, Ryan Dice, and many others run the same principles. We just literally adapted this for content teams. If you want ours, I actually made a free one you can download using the link in the description below. If you run meetings every single week, this will save you hours of time. And what's cool is you can automate this with AI like Claude Cowork nowadays, and you can save hours from your VA or EA from having to prep this as well. So check it out. The link is in the description. But for solo agents or small teams, I want you to kind of think of this as the same principle, but a smaller version of it. So on Friday, write down what performed well, what didn't, and then what you think the pattern is. And don't just look at the numbers. You want to write your own diagnosis of why it worked. And then before your next planning session, even if it's just you and your phone, write what you're going to make next week and why. Not a content calendar, one paragraph argument of why these specific ideas deserve spending 5, 10, 20 plus hours actually executing them. And that form forces thinking, the memo forces prioritization, and that's true whether you have 60 plus people like us or one. An example of this is like our strategists and managers submit the data every single Monday. So if you have someone that runs a platform or runs your marketing, they submit the information on Monday. The meeting owner takes those forms and makes it a memo, an agenda, and then the meeting is, do we agree? What do we test? And who owns it? Every single Monday night, for example, if you're a solo agent, you can spend about 15 minutes. You can open up YouTube Studio, write down the top and bottom performers for the last 30 to 60 days and look what was different. Write one sentence on what you're going to try the next time. And that's the layer 1 and layer 2 in one sitting. And then your next filming session starts with that idea, not a blank page. The big thing to remember with all of this is every major decision gets a memo first. And the standard is if I wasn't there and only my written artifacts existed, would people understand the intentions? And that's how I kind of think through everything. You want to ask yourself, what percentage of your last team meetings or your content planning session was spent on information that you could have processed before the meeting? Because every system that we covered so far is mechanical with the ideation, the content mix, the tracking, and how to actually do the meetings. And you can install all 4 of those immediately. But there's one thing that can kill all of it if you get it wrong, and it actually has nothing to do with the process. So none of this actually matters if you punish failure. See, for teams, that means the leader is punishing the team when you mess up. But if you're a solo agent or a solo person, that actually means punishing yourself. This is why most people plateau even after they learn the right frameworks or the right system, or why people actually don't innovate and experiment. The system is only as strong as the willingness to actually use that experimentation bucket. And most people will quietly fill most of their time with the safe thing because the cost of failing feels too high, especially when it's punished. So if you punish failure, the team will learn to play it safe forever. And if you punish your own failures, you'll play it safe forever. And this is one of the most interesting things that I learned when I kind of watched The Diary of the CEO, Byte Story, their team, is Grace Miller at The Diary of the CEO is actually their head of failure. And she said something that stuck with me, is that they don't just celebrate failure. They celebrate failure plus learning that it produced. And Stephen Bartlett personally messages people who try things regardless of the result. They have an Experimenter of the Week trophy, and it's pretty crazy to think the status and what they attach to literally just trying, experimenting, and failing. Not just about winning. That's important because what you recognize gets repeated. And that's why their team actually uses experimentation throughout the entire organization instead of just playing it safe. And this is one of the biggest reasons why Stephen Bartlett says The Diary of the CEO kept innovating the last several years while other podcasts plateaued. But this isn't just a team thing. We've seen it with agents who post one video that underperforms, they check the views and they feel embarrassed and then they quit it. They ran the experiment once and they punished themselves for it. And then they went back to the safe content. And that agent is actually their own toxic manager. So if you have a team, what we're doing is we're trying to learn how do we reward innovation weekly, because visible recognition is what gets repeated. So we want to recognize experiments, not just wins. And a few examples of this that I've seen that we're testing on is we have a team shoutouts channel. You can recognize in meetings for ideas and experiments. You can run hands-on workshops, not just presentation, where you're testing hooks, editing, etc. An example of this is our script writing team actually has a monthly training focused on one part of the script every single month. And you just want to repeat what you're saying within the team because repeated language becomes a shared vocabulary. So by the time you're tired of saying it, the team is just starting to internalize it. But if you're a solo agent, you want to give yourself a minimum experiment window. No format gets killed after one video. You want to give it at least 3 attempts, as long as it's proven there's data, you can back it, and then you want to test it several times before you decide if it doesn't work. And then if you log your own experiments, even just in a simple Google Doc, Apple Notes, Sheets, whatever, this is what we tried, this is what happened, and this is what we learned. And this log prevents you from making the same mistake twice. So you want to ask yourself, honestly, am I avoiding a format because the data says it doesn't work, or because one video underperformed and I felt bad about it? Because those are completely different things. And if you have a team, kind of like us or Flight Story, think about how can you implement an experiment of the month trophy. Plus, having recognition from the CEO is helpful. Or you can have a monthly workshop rotation where you tear down and analyze hooks or thumbnails or retention, or maybe you add an idea pitch meeting. As a solo agent, what you want to do. An example why this is important is a solo agent that we actually worked with who actually tried a video that was avoid moving to area. And the first video only got half their usual views, and they almost killed that video. And then they did about 2 to 3 more, and it became the highest performing format of the year and on their channel. And one data point almost completely killed that format, but it ended up becoming the best thing that they could repeat on the channel. The goal is to become the chief repeating officer, whether it's just you or whether it's a team. You should always find ways to repeat things, whether it's experiments or you find outliers and you look for patterns and trends, or you have to constantly say to the team that we want to experiment and reward experimentation. By the way, if you want that 3-level meeting system that I talked about earlier completely for free, make sure you download in the description below. 99% of people on social media just post content. The top 1% run a proven system. That system where great ideas get surfaced, they get tested, they get tracked, and then they get repeated. And what's important is installing a culture where trying something new is safer than playing it safe. That's the difference between having a content calendar just because you need to check off the box of holidays and your content ends up flatlining, versus having a content machine that compounds every single month on your channel. You want to make content so valuable that the right person shares it before they ever reach out to you. The question you ask yourself for this isn't, will this video get views? It's, would someone pay $100,000 for this video? But it's for free. The thing is, you probably won't hit that bar, but it's the frame of reference that separates making average content versus making excellent content. And if your audience is making a $300,000, $500,000, $1 million decision and your video looks and feels like a crappy vlog that was put together last minute, there's gonna be a mismatch in the audience. The production quality, the depth of the idea, and the generosity of the teaching should match the weight of the decision that the viewer is making. And you won't always hit that, but you should always be aiming for that. If you're an agent or team that wants us to build this system for you in your business, you can actually reach out using the information in the description below. We've helped agents selling 30 million to 300 million start, grow, and scale their local brand with YouTube. All you have to do is apply in the description and we can see if it's a good fit to work together.